I'm not gonna lie, I never truly understood how good I had it as a kid. Sitting in the house all day, absorbing food, and watching cartoons that my parents said would corrupt my mind. I can personally say I lived through peak. But sadly, those days are lost, and the quality of shows have fallen off dramatically with the rise of brain rot and new gen humor. However, the kids shows today's are not indicative of the shows in the past. So let's go ahead and put on a tier list. Sesame Street. Sesame Street, one of my favorite childhood shows. Sesame Street is an educational kids show that bridged the gap between many different cultures. Truly a show ahead of its time. I remember every time Sesame Street would come on when I was a kid, I would grab a fruit snack and an oatmeal cream pie in preparation for my regularly scheduled Sesame Street. The characters were my favorite part of the show. Characters like Elmo teaching me how to touch on people, be a good communist, and still having the time to teach me my ABCs through song and dance. Big Bird dropping gems of knowledge, educating me in home defense, and showing me that I could truly reach for the stars. And most of all, Cookie Monster, showing me how to be persistent in my chase of the cookie, how to deal with a cookie consuming addiction, and even how to properly eat cookie. It was a timeless show that garnered worldwide attention. Ultimately, it belongs in S tier. LazyTown. Listen, I'ma just come out and say it. I had a crush on Stephanie, okay? I know, very shocking, but even more shocking, I had a crush on Bessie, Busybody, and Trixie, and even Spartacus. All jokes aside, if you aren't familiar with LazyTown, here's how an episode would typically go. We'd start off with Spartacus. This man would wake up and instantly be doing the gymnast routine. All that flipping, just to go play with some little kids. And then this man Robbie, hearing the commotion, would get up with his Bohemian Rhapsody looking ass and start hating instantly, and would concoct a plan to take him down. Robbie would then challenge Spartacus to some kind of contest, and still lose to Spartacus while he just oral farms the whole time. But let's be honest, Stephanie was the real star of the show. Ultimately, the show falls to C tier. Wonder Pets. The Wonder Pets is a show about anthropomorphic animals living double lives as superheroes, with the teacher none the wiser. The trio of animals being a turtle, a hamster, and a little duckling that somehow defies the laws of physics by flying. But I suppose that is just one of her superpowers on the laundry list of others she has. Speaking of which, instead of being called the Wonder Pets, it should be called the Avenger Pets, because these guys were stacked. Not only were they conscious with the ability to speak to each other, they spoke every other animal's language. Problem-solving skills on the level of Einstein. Make and operate complex machinery like the world has never seen before. And were blessed with heavenly vocals. The singing never stopped. It's no wonder my attention span was so cooked, because there was never a dull moment in this show. And ultimately, Wonder Pets belongs in B tier. Phineas and Ferb. This show had my childhood in a chokehold, with Phineas and Ferb being extraordinary geniuses in whatever field they wanted to explore that day. Years of technological progress performed in just a few hours. Not to mention the fake genius that attempts to reconcile his childhood trauma by spamming random inventions that would ultimately end up being destroyed by a platypus that somehow never got caught on the job, even by the two smartest boys in the world. Speaking of never getting caught, Phineas and Ferb would make all types of huge scale projects, but somehow every time they were to be thwarted by Candace, the universe would clean up the entire project for them, leaving no trace of the building materials. I am starting to think that Phineas and Ferb had the entire world in a genjutsu, where everyone besides their parents knew about the project and just thought it was normal. Isabella would always be pining for Phineas, and Ferb can pull whoever he wanted, and Candace would never be able to show their mom or dad their creations. Ultimately, Phineas and Ferb will get a B tier. Fanboy and Chum. This show was like a fever dream. There was no coherence in any of the development of the stories in each episode. Two boys dressed in their own superhero costumes, reaping havoc on the world, causing all types of trouble over their obsession with toys, video games, and frosty freezy fruits. Wacky characters with their own sets of quirks, wizards, grown nerds, crazy teachers, and a girl with an unhealthy obsession for one of our protagonists. So far, this show is the only one that features a character that actually exists in real life. Fanboy and Chum was the precursor to the degradation of my attention span. Never-ending sound effects, motion, and foolishness. I am not gonna lie, Fanboy and Chum played a fairly important role in my humor today, and because of that, Fanboy and Chum will receive a C tier. The Ren and Stimpy Show. I honestly never had any idea what was going on in this show at any given time. It felt like I wasn't supposed to be watching at times, featuring a cat and this dog looking thing. They would go on adventures that were beyond random. The closest I would reference the show to is like a Looney Tunes and Robot Chicken combination. Equal parts grotesque with random cartoon skits. Stimpy would be the one talking to the audience most of the time, usually while watching Ren go through hell, a show that a person with true class can appreciate. Ultimately, Ren and Stimpy belong in B tier. Invader Zim. What a classic. This show was gross, but it was just funny enough to keep me entertained. By Zim's failed attempts at world domination, him constantly flexing his superiority over the human race, and having a person who despised him, and not to mention his robot companion Gerd. Back when it was airing, I really didn't like it, but looking back on it, the show was really good. Zim's attempts at world domination were foiled by a kid by the name of Dib, his main op, Gerd the robot, or his own incompetence. That's why the aliens above sent him to Earth, because they never trusted him anyway. Because if he was in space with them, one mistake and the whole fleet goes sky high. Dib, the main op, would somehow always find ways to scrap and foil with Zim, even though he had alien technology. And Gerd the robot just had bad code, always finding some way to inhibit Zim's plans. It was always funny to watch Zim try to overcome these things. Ultimately, Invader Zim will get an A tier. Rugrats. I had this show on repeat. Who would have thought a kid watching kids would be so entertaining? Tommy Pickles, the kid to watch, stayed with his people and his trusty screwdriver, while also having the ability to converse and ride his dog. My God, was this guy a handful. The cast was quite detailed, with different traits that manifested through the children. Angelica being the main antagonist, because her mom was always at work, with her dad always being spineless. So, as a result, she was spoiled. Chucky being the main man for Tommy, because he lacks self-esteem, being the only Rugrat raised by a single parent. These traits and conflicts of interest made for great baby adventures that you can still enjoy to this day, which was a banger. Ultimately, Rugrats belong in B tier. You made it this far, you might as well subscribe. And if you like videos like this one, make sure to click the playlist or click the one that's suggested to you.
Bitch, I'm going up, I ain't stopping. Bitch, she loving me, she keep talking.